And for more on this, we're now being joined from Washington, D.C. by Dr. Reza Khanzadeh. He's an adjunct professor in political science, Middle East and Islamic studies at George Mason University. Thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us on the broadcast. Now, of course, we'd like to start with your assessment of the address that Trump delivered to the nation. And also, he said that now the war is, of course, going to continue for at least 2 to 3 more weeks, and where U.S. is going to intensify its attack. And he's also mentioned that most of the primary objectives have been met. How do you see that panning out?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. Unfortunately, Trump's address, which I think was about 19 minutes long, he didn't mention anything new. Everything that he's talked about in those 19 minutes, him, his Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, his press secretary, his entire, cabinet has been making these, talking points for the past, almost 5 weeks now. And most, if not all, of the arguments that he's been making are essentially Israeli talking points. And the timeline that he's given, 2 to 3 weeks of completion, that's also been something that his administration has moved that timeline every few weeks. So if we rewind back five weeks ago, he said it would take 2 to 3 weeks, and then 2 to 3 weeks later, it's another 2 to 3 weeks. So what we see here is just another strategy from the Trump administration where he essentially wants everyone to be guessing what the next move is. A part of that strategy can be argued that he himself and his cabinet really don't have a comprehensive, strategy. They don't know exactly what they want to do or how long it's going to take. They're essentially taking it day by day and seeing what sites they bomb, how successful it is, and then they recalibrate, readjust, and then they see what else needs to be done. But another strategy is that this is all done on purpose. It is very calculated and also very very deliberate in his messaging to the public, where he pushes these deadlines back 2 to 3 weeks every 2 to 3 weeks. And what that leaves an opening for him is a chance for him to essentially invent or create an off-ramp for himself where he can tell a success story and say that we, the United States, have declared victory. We have destroyed Iran's military, Navy, Air Force, ballistic missiles, nuclear sites, as he said in this 19-minute address, and then find a way to leave this conflict.
Honestly.
And there's been times where he says we want regime change, then he says we don't. Then there's times where he says Iran must, have unconditional surrender, and then a few days later, he kind of backtracks on that. So all this back and forth flip-flopping messages does leave the entire world essentially on the edge of their seats to try to figure out what the next move is going to be.
Understood. Dr.
But I
Khanzadeh.
think right now, the main country in the driver's seat is Iran, because they control the Strait of Hormuz, because they are essentially having this chokehold on that strait. That's going to be the driving factor, because even though Trump makes the argument that the U.S. doesn't need the oil coming out from there, it doesn't really matter, because the entire world market is set for all countries, regardless of where the oil is going out of or into. Everyone pays essentially the same price because of this conflict, even though
Dr. Khanzadeh,
U.S.
Allow me to just come in there. Before the address that Trump had towards the American people, there was a long post put out by the Iranian president also addressing American people. And in that, I'll just take a small excerpt out of it, saying attacking Iran's vital infrastructure, including energy and industrial facilities, directly targets the Iranian people, and such actions carry consequences that extend far beyond Iran's borders. Now, this is something which came out just a few hours before Trump took that podium and addressed the American people. Is this giving a sense of where Iran sees this war heading, even though Trump says 2 to 3 weeks is all it's going to take for them to achieve whatever they had set out to achieve?
That's right. Yeah, your assessment is on point in my opinion, because what we have to keep in mind with the Islamic Republic of Iran is that they have known that such a conflict was going to happen. And I'm not talking about just with the 12-day war in June or even now. I'm talking about decades of preparation from the Islamic Republic of Iran. There's a reason why these air campaigns from Israel and the United States have been going on for 5 weeks, and how Iran has still been able to launch drones and missiles into its Arab neighbors, soil and into, Israel, because they have spent this regime, the regime in Iran has spent 40 plus years diversifying its military capability and where all their ballistic missiles are stored and where their launch points are. They have been very smart, very strategic in that sense. And with this message coming from the Iranian President Pezeshkian, that is another step into that strategy. So while Trump may be playing checkers, like I said, one day at a time, seeing where he hits, how successful it is, and then reassessing and recalibrating, Trump is most likely playing checkers while Iran is playing chess. And that message from the president of Iran shows that. They show that even though Trump makes these comments that it's going to be 2 or 3 more weeks, there's going to be more decisive attacks, Iran knows what is coming, their way. They know that their energy infrastructures are going to be hit, and they are ready to attack in kind. They are ready to attack all the other energy infrastructures throughout the Middle East.
Understood.
And that has not been a bluff on the side of Iran. You have noticed that every comment coming out of the Islamic Republic about, if you, Israel, or the United States do this, we will do that. And every time something happens, Iran does exactly what they say they will do. Where on the other hand, Trump, for example, says that Iran needs to open the Strait of Hormuz in the next 24 hours or else we will bomb their, plants. And it didn't happen. Trump made up this story about how talks are underway and they are having negotiations. And then he backtracks again and says, we're going to wait 10 more days until we, reach an agreement. All of this, again, is showing that Trump is playing checkers while Iran is playing
I hear your point. Dr. Khanzadeh, just stay with us. We're cutting into some breaking news coming in from Israel, and we'll be right back with you to discuss it further.